And now joining me on the Peerless Boilers hotline, a member of the New York Jets Sack Exchange. Now he is on 1050 ESPN radio, along with my good friend Bob Wischusen, each and every Sunday calling the Gang Green games, and that is Marty Lyons. Marty, Zach Gelb here, TalkUSA.tv. Thank you for joining me, and how are you on this fine evening?
Good, Zach. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great myself, and I know you won a national championship at Alabama. Alabama plays LSU in the national championship game this year. Will the Crimson Tide get another national championship to their resume?
Well, you know what, Zach? I think they got to play a little bit better than they did the first time in the season against LSU. They got to score more points. But I look forward to them winning the BCS national championship. I think they'll be ready this time.
A lot of analysts have said this isn't really fair because if LSU loses this game, really Alabama and LSU is at 1-1. Do you have any problem with the rematch of Bama-LSU?
Well, being from Alabama, I have no problem at all with the rematch. And if I was from Oklahoma State, I would have every reason to say that Oklahoma State should have had an opportunity to play for the national championship. I can see it from both directions. I can understand it from their side. I can understand it from Alabama's side. But right now, it is what it is. The computer voted, and they put everything in there, and Alabama has a second opportunity to beat LSU.
Well, hopefully for your sake, your field goal kicker actually makes his field goals this time. But let's go to James Harrison. He has been suspended by the league. Is the one-game suspension fair for the hit that he put on Colt McCoy?
Well, you know, it's a repeat offender. He's been fined many times, and I think that since they're trying to clean up the game and trying to preserve the integrity of the game and try to protect the players as much as possible. I saw the hit. I'm not sure whether he, went helmet to helmet. I think just because of his history in the past, that's why he got the one-game suspension.
Well, you played in the NFL when it was, quote-unquote, a more tougher league. I'm not saying today's NFL isn't tough, but you've heard analysts who were former players. They're saying the league is getting soft. Some players are saying it's right because you see these guys having concussions. They're dying at a younger age. With that being said, do you think the NFL is getting soft, or do you like what Goodell's doing now in fining players when they have these unnecessary roughness hits?
Well, you know what, Zach, it's a fine line. You want to protect your players because so many players left the game early with concussions. And then they have problems down the line. And there are quite a few players that played in the NFL that are dying at an early age. I don't think it's because they've taken one too many hits to the head. I just think that maybe when you leave the game, there should be some sort of medical plan in place for all these players so that they can have physicals every year. You're not dying at the age of 42 of a heart attack, which is basically a direct result of hypertension. So to protect the players out on the field, I think that's the responsibility of the league. I don't think it affects the league. I just think it takes a while for some of the players to get used to the calls.
We're talking to Marty Lyons at 1050 ESPN Radio. The Eagles play the Jets this week. And Marty, let's get right to it. The Jets, for the second year in a row, lost their leader on defense in Jim Leonard. How are they going to replace Leonard this time around?
Well, I don't know if you can replace Jim Leonard, but you have to move on. Rodney Poole has to come in, and you go from being a backup to a starter relatively quick in the NFL. They did it last year. Now they're in a position where you almost say it's a must-win situation. They have to go down to Philly. They have to contain Michael Vick. They have to contain all the weapons that the Eagles have. But, more importantly, they have to do what they do best. And I think that they have established the running game the last couple of weeks against the Redskins in Kansas City. And if they can establish the running game against the Eagles, that's the best defense that you can have for Michael Vick because he'll be on the sideline.
Well, you talked about containing Michael Vick, and I'll put you in the role of Mike Pettine. I'll put you in the role of head coach Rex Ryan. What were some ways that you would try to contain number 7, who's very explosive?
Well, the first thing you got to do is make sure all your players are disciplined. Take care of the running lanes and take care of containment. Michael Vick, he always has a way of getting outside the pocket, and that usually happens when you have a defensive end or an outside linebacker that believes he can get to the quarterback by taking an inside rush, and then the next thing you know, you're on the quarterback. But he spins out and he gets outside of the containment. So it's the little things this week that you have to do to beat the Eagles to make sure that you contain them.
One matchup I love this week is the all-pro cornerback in Darrelle Revis going up against the exciting Deshaun Jackson. Break down this matchup between the quarterback and the wide receiver for me.
Well, I think the one thing about Darrelle Revis, he can cover you like a blanket. And if you do make a reception, he's going to tackle you. That's the best thing that I like about Darrelle. He's an all-around player.
Well, you look at Deshaun Jackson, and he's been very controversial this year. He held out in the beginning of the season for his contract. He fined to get up on the field for week 1. Then he had that whole incident where he missed the game because he showed up late to the stadium. And then he also had that boneheaded play up against the New York Giants that cost him 50 yards. If you were a teammate of Deshaun Jackson and you saw him doing all these controversial stuff, would that be something you would go in the locker room and say, Deshaun, you got to cut this stuff out? Or is that something you would leave to the coaching staff?
Well, I think the best way to correct a mistake like that is to have a teammate come up to you. And I don't know Deshaun Jackson. I know he has a great deal of talent, but that's where the leadership in the locker room will take place. There's only so much a coach can do. Andy Reid, he's a tremendous coach, and he's underneath a lot of pressure. So he needs the help of the veteran players in the locker room, and he needs the help of the leaders in the locker room. That's something that a teammate really needs to take care of.
And going on the Jets' defensive side of the ball, Aaron Maben has been a stud this year. I know you saw him twice a year when he was with Buffalo. He wasn't that productive. What have you seen here with Aaron Maben going into the Jets system that what he failed in Buffalo? What do you see Rex Ryan working this guy up?
The first thing that they did, Zach, they told him, hey, this is going to be your role. You have to get to the quarterback. All right? And then the second thing they did was they said, hey, you have unbelievable speed. You can't teach speed. You either have it or you don't. So what they did was they started to move him in a wide 9, meaning he's way outside the offensive tackle. And if he gets low enough and he gets that center of gravity turned to the quarterback, he's just too quick for the offensive tackle to get to. They try to get a piece of him. They can't square up on him. And the only way that he's not getting to the quarterback is if he goes directly at the offensive tackle and he takes himself out of position. What has made Aaron so successful is his motor. He doesn't stop. A lot of times he'll come from the backside of the quarterback after he's been blocked and just chase the guy down. He'll strip him. He'll cause a fumble. Been a great addition for the New York Jets. And I give credit to, Mike Patton, Rex Ryan. They're putting him in the best positions where he can be successful and be productive for the team.
We're talking to Marty Lyons, the Jets color analyst on ESPN Radio, a member of the Sack Exchange going back to his playing days when he played with the New York Jets. And Marty, let's go to the offensive side of the ball for Gang Green. Talk about the progression and the progress throughout the course of the season of one Sean Green. His last 6-7 games, he looked like a stud.
Well, he really has, Zach. And I think the one thing that they did was Brian Schottenheimer put in place to say, hey, you know what? Just run downhill, north and south. You know what? I don't want you second-guessing where your hole is. Just run to where you're supposed to go. And he's been getting excellent blocking by John Connor. John Connor has been getting to that second level. Offensive line has been doing a tremendous job. Offensive line took a lot of criticism early in the year because they were allowing a lot of pressure on Mark Sanchez. They weren't opening up the holes. But when you have a couple of new players on the offensive line and then Nick Mangold got hurt, you really had to take time for that offensive line to gel, to build the continuity. Had back-to-back weeks where they didn't give up any sacks. Last week, they gave up 3 sacks to Kansas City. But when in the second half, they did an excellent job, protecting for Mark. And when you have a running back that runs for 128 yards, they did their job all day.
You mentioned that Jets offensive line, and they have a tough matchup this week. It's not easy going up against those Eagles pass rushers.
No, it's not. But you know what? You get paid to protect the quarterback. You get paid to open the holes. And right now, you're in a position at 8-5. You control your own destiny. You can make it to the playoffs. You just have to continue to win. That has to be the driving force this week. To go down there, just take it one play at a time, one quarter at a time, and do what you have to do. Whether you win by 1 or if you win by 10, you just have to win.
The quarterback, Mark Sanchez, he's cut out on turnovers the last 2 weeks. He has 0 interceptions, and the week before in the season, he's had a plethora of interceptions. What have you noticed differently with Sanchez on the field? How has he cut out on the interceptions within the last 2 weeks?
Well, I think, number 1, he's protecting the ball. Number 2, he's making smart decisions. And number 3, I think a lot of credit should go to Brian Schottenheimer. He's basically simplified the offensive game plan. And the game plan has been very balanced. It was lopsided in the beginning of the year when you lose 3 games on the road. You look at the overall percentage, they were so top-heavy in throwing the ball because they thought they had a lot of playmakers, which they did, but they got away from their own identity, which was the ground and pound.
Well, you look at the Jets' system this year. The quarterback, Sanchez, he's been ridiculed by the fans, as well as Brian Schottenheimer. I first want to ask you about Mark Sanchez. You know, Jim Leonard, he was very spoken about it. He said Sanchez didn't deserve to be booed. Is that frustrating as a player when you walk into your building and you're getting booed?
I think it's frustrating anytime you get booed, especially at home. But there's no greater fans than the New York Jets and no greater fans than New York fans. They know the game of football. There's an expectation that they want to see their team come out and produce every single week. They pay a good dollar to go and see the Jets play, so they have a right to voice their opinion. Sometimes you wish that they wouldn't, but as quickly as they booed, they'll quickly go back and cheer you if you do something well.
And then listening to talk radio, they've been very critical, as well as Brian Schottenheimer. How would you rate Schotty's job this year with this Jets offensive unit?
Well, I think at 8-5, you have to say, hey, in the month of December, we got a chance to make it to the playoffs. If the playoffs started tomorrow, we'd be the 6th seed. I think that's what you measure Brian Schottenheimer open, and he's done an excellent job. They've only lost 5 games. Has it been pretty? No. Has it been productive all the time? No. But the bottom line is they're 8-5, and they've won enough games that if the playoffs started tomorrow, they'd be in.
Marty, last question here on the way out as we're talking to Marty Lyons. Tell me a little bit more about your charity and the work you do in the community.
You know, Zach, I started a foundation 29 years ago for terminally ill children to take their greatest wish in life and make it become a reality. I now operate that foundation in 13 states. We've helped over 6,500 youngsters. The sad part about it is probably 60% of the kids that we work with won't live to see the age of 18. So for us, we try to improve the quality of life, whether it's for a day, a week, and hopefully, God willing, it can be for a lifetime. And we feel like we're doing something positive.
Marty, great job. Thanks so much for joining me. Enjoy the game. And by the way, if I can make a recommendation, I don't know if you're a big cheesesteak guy, but you have to check out Mama's. It's a great cheesesteak in Philly this week.
You got it, Zach. And best of luck to you and your dad. You're doing a great job.
Thanks so much.